Welcome to the Stress Free Dentist Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Eric Block. As always, I want to inspire, entertain, and educate you on the best tools and technologies out there. My goal is to help make your practice and career more profitable, efficient, and most importantly, more enjoyable. And check out all of my nonfiction and children's books on Amazon, and check out the stressfreedentist.com for any upcoming events. And if you're feeling you're a dental professional that's burnt out, or you just feel stuck or want to get to that next level, visit the International Academy of Dental Life Coaches, or www.iadlc.com, and we'll get you matched up with a life coach that understands dentistry. I also wanted to thank our amazing sponsor, Equa Marketing. They have helped me and my practice over the years to improve with SEO and website performance. And to find out how you can make your practice dominate in your area, go to www.equa.com/MSMSFD to book your complimentary meeting. Again, that's www.ekwa.com/MSMSFD. All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode. And today I'm joined by Tom Passalacqua. How you doing, Tom?
Good, Eric. Doing well, doing well. Braving this cold winter we have in the Northeast.
Yeah. Tom, welcome to the show. And I think on Monday we're going to get slammed. So I got to figure out if I'm going to be closing my office or not. So that's always a fun decision to make, like to close or not to close. It's always a tricky one.
Yeah, wait until last minute, right? And then trouble really happens. So,
Yeah, I do. I usually wait until because you never know, it's weather. It could
mhm.
change. And we've closed the office before and it was a mistake. And so I usually do wait until like the day before and then make the call. So Tom, thanks for joining us. Tom is an executive coach, certified executive coach, and helps a lot of dental professionals. And I want to get into all that. But first, Tom, how did you even get involved with helping dentists?
Yeah, no, I appreciate this. I appreciate being here. I've been in dental about 10 years now. I've done quite a few things, but my journey started when I was young, being passionate about helping people. And that led me to start a career in education. So I started out of high school pursuing being a teacher and got a master's in education and taught for many years throughout New York City and found that I loved the education process and the learning process, but realized I couldn't do that in a general setting for my entire career. So I had all that background and I designed curriculums. I've built programs. I was even a founding teacher in a couple of New York City charter schools, but wanted to expand myself and kind of change directions. So I figured, oh, sales is a fun area to try to, learn. And a dental position came up for a dental manufacturing company. So I was one day a teacher, the next day a sales rep in Manhattan for a dental company, and figured out, okay, what do I do now? But I relied on my skills and abilities that I honed as a teacher to the sales space. And I built really great relationships, communicated very well, came into sales with the lens of an educator and did fairly well. I was one of the top performing reps in the company and started to train and mentor other sales reps over a couple of years. I presented at sales meetings and started to do web training for the company. And I really liked that aspect. And an opportunity to work at a DSO came up a couple of years back. So I went onto the group practice side to help with business development and mergers and acquisitions and did the sales and marketing for that group. And we were successful and scaled, the company quite a bit. And then where I am today kind of is a merger of all of those aspects of my life, my passion for helping people, my experience in sales, my experience as an educator, my knowledge of dentistry, to where my executive coaching and business coaching really focuses on helping people navigate their own boundaries and their own, emotions to get to the level they want to achieve. So it's been a fun journey the last number of years.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you've seen a lot of dentistry. So you initially were in sales, and did you say in Manhattan?
Yeah, yeah. I was New York City rep.
And so were you going from office to office and just pounding the pavement?
Yes, it was boots on the ground, front line, rep. We worked with a couple distributors, but I did a lot of direct selling, and the city is a fun territory because there are some buildings that they're all healthcare buildings, so you can go floor to floor, door to door, and you build up your resiliency really well because sales. It could be a tough landscape to navigate, especially if you're not used to or familiar or comfortable with rejection. And, you have to identify the aspects you can control. But for me, it was building a great relationship, again, coming at it with a educational aspect, not a sales aspect. So yeah, no, I got quite a bit of exposure, during those times in the city. Yeah.
And what were you selling? What kind of product, or was it a software?
No, it was restorative materials. So composites, bonding agents, cements. So all restorative. Great company, great materials. It helped to believe in the brand and in the product. It was effective. So that definitely helped along the way.
So you just said a few things there that can even relate to a leader of a dental office or the owner of a dental office. So you said it's all about building relationships. Same thing
Hmm.
with being a dentist and their patients. It's especially for me, we've gone fully out of network. So it's all about the relationships that I've built with these patients that
Hmm.
continue to stay in my office and refer their friends and family. And then getting the team to believe in what you're doing and getting everyone on the same page and and spreading the message and having a great culture. So a lot of what you just said is similar to owning or being a dentist or being a leader. And then
Yeah.
what was it like going to the DSO side?
So yeah, it was pretty wild because, you know, at the time it was like about 5 years ago. So DSOs were just kind of coming to mainstream. And, at first, a lot of the professionals in dentistry were like, I hear about these DSOs. And, fast forward to today, I mean, everyone knows what a group practice is, right? And there's a lot of different models and a lot of different philosophies for consolidation or building practices or building groups. But it was wild to see the management side of it, of how a company can become so robust in supporting, dozens and then hundreds of dental practices. And especially when you're acquiring practices, all of the nuances that come with acquiring the culture, the emotions, the personalities. It's, completely different than just selling product. So it was a lot of the transition aspect. Uh, I got a chance to learn about the finance side of things, about the operational side of things, the administrative side. So I really saw quite a bit of the industry from a couple of different lenses. And it just really gave me a lot of healthy perspective of where dental is today. And even on the clinical side, just the clinical advancements over the last couple of years, scanning to printing to now AI and all of the software innovations too, between, phone systems, patient communications, revenue cycle, insurances. There's so much innovation and change both on private and group practice side. So it's pretty wild to just be part of this ecosystem. And it allows me to connect with so many different levels of professionals in the industry. So I feel like it really, really helped me just broaden my perspective and hone my skills.
Funny you said, that and being in Manhattan, it must be such a different animal because I'm in the suburbs of Boston and there's maybe 9 dental offices in my town,
Right.
where in New York City or some other large metropolitan cities, there could be 9 dental offices on your floor,
Absolutely.
and hundred, dozens or more in the building.
Hmm.
But there's just so much population.
Yep.
Um, and now, did you find that DSOs were ahead of the game versus the private practice regarding business management and kind of the back end of things?
I would say the groups who prioritized management are doing great, right? If you're understanding how to manage the culture and manage the emotional side of the transition, that's where groups did well, especially if you're acquiring. The group I worked for didn't do many de novos, so it was hard to kind of build that culture from the ground up. Once you acquire that culture, you're managing. the dynamic between the lead doctor, the associates, the staff, and ultimately the patient base. So if you prioritize that, yes, you could stay ahead of the game. As far as the support systems, we were very robust, and I see a lot of group practices who are scaling well. Really focus on what are the tangible support systems that they're bringing to that acquired practice. The resources that that lead doctor and team were not yet able to source on their own. So really the value add and the resources and the systems and the operational support, that's where groups really, were able to stay ahead of that curve.
Awesome. Now let's get into all about executive coaching. How is that different from other modes of support?
Yeah, I appreciate that question because it's I get asked that quite a bit, and it's probably what attracted me to coaching in the first place, where my style of coaching and my philosophy of coaching is not that of a consultant or an advisor or a therapist. I'm not working with a client or a team as the expert. My role is helping them refine their goals and strategies to accomplish their goals. So it's a communication style and a perspective shift that I bring as a coach. And if you have a specific goal, a long-term or short-term goal that you and your team or someone is working to strive to achieve, my role is to bolster them, enable them, empower them to best achieve that goal. And I'll ask very specific, challenging questions, getting them to shift their perspective, thinking a little bit differently, holding up a mirror, being that sounding board, because my experiences and my skill set doesn't apply to everybody. And I don't want to come at it with my opinions, my perspective, because that might not be applicable for that type of client. My job is to help them see clearly, get them grounded, get the emotional component out of their way, and best strategize to make the accomplishments that they want to make.
Yeah, and as an executive coach, dentists are, we're executives, where we're leaders, whether we're an associate, a specialist, or the owner of a practice. Make no mistake, the dentist is a leader, and that's a lot of stress and pressure
Mhm.
to have on your shoulders. What are you seeing? What are the common challenges you see when working with clients in the dental field?
Yeah, some of the commonalities. We talk about imposter syndrome and the doubts and the uncertainties. That I think is pretty common, where you have someone kind of spinning in their own head, and that's a number of clients I'm working with now. I mean, that's a commonality. It's just I feel like I'm getting too far in my head, or I'm second guessing myself. And when you are that leader, not only are you, performing clinical dentistry and the administrative, side of things, you have to inspire and lead teams and manage people. I mean, that there's quite a bit of undertaking on the people side of things. So a commonality is helping someone get grounded from their emotional overwhelm, overcoming the doubt or the uncertainty of being that leader, kind of pushing your comfort zone, leading the practice to grow. If that's new territory for yourself as a professional, the uncertainties can kind of, creep in because you've never been in that region before. You've never experienced leading a practice or a team at that level. So, sometimes you do second guess yourself, or you do, feel uncertain, or you feel inadequate or insecure about your decisions you're making. My role is, again, to help ground you, think clearly, remove that emotional component, getting you think logically, because that's what's going to help you to be the best leader and the best clinician and the best manager if you can. So yeah, common themes are the emotional side of things.
Yeah, and I felt, well, when I first got out of school, I was a hot mess, and I had major imposter syndrome. I was working
Mm,
in the suburbs of Boston, and a lot of my patients were doctors and engineers and lawyers and scientists, and I looked like I was 15, and I'm like, why are these people going to even listen to me? And I had to really just get out of my own head,
mm,
and get more secure and comfortable in my own skin. That was a major um, turning point for me. But also, when I went from an associate to the owner of a practice, it was like the next day all of a sudden I felt like I had to be this leader. And there was so much uncertainty with that because I never learned how to be a leader in school. I didn't really take many CE classes on it. It was just all of a sudden I was the leader of a business.
Yeah. Yeah, you could be the best dentist, and that's where your passion and focus is. But now you have to step into that role, and it's like, oh, what do I even do? And again, I would say that's probably one of the more common, experiences. I mean, I can imagine you have many colleagues that had the same journey and perspective as you did.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think, some people are just naturally gifted at being a leader and, from day one they're good at it, but I think that's rare. And I think in dentistry, we go to school and all we've known is doing well and success. And if we didn't succeed or pass that test, we just work harder and study harder and take it again. And
Hmm.
then you get in the real world and you're dealing with real staff and real paying customers, and you get your first taste of mistakes and failures, and sometimes that's a lot for a dentist to handle. They get their first bad review, or they get their first uncomfortable situation with a patient, because their filling broke. And
Hmm.
a lot of times dentists, that's all they've known is success and being the best in their class. All of a sudden they can't handle the mistakes and failures.
Interesting, interesting. Yeah, it could be a tough transition. Yeah, and that's what I love being able to provide is that space to navigate all of that. And I don't just work with dentists, but it's just, that's my network, and that's where I have the most relatable, experience and connections. So, but yeah, I'm glad you got through it.
Yeah, I also noticed that it'll creep back in, and I wanted to ask you about that.
Hmm.
If you're doing well, I compare imposter syndrome to, like, you're on a bus and you're making a lot of bus stops, and if you're not careful, that imposter syndrome will get on that bus with you, and it can creep back in if you're not careful.
Mm.
Um, for me, it had a lot to do with removing negativity in my life and just keeping
Sure.
positive people around me. What are your thoughts on these distracting emotions creeping back in?
Yeah, you make a really good point. The awareness piece, I think, is kind of the first step. How would you rate yourself on how aware or self-reflective you are, right? Like, how often do you take time to just pause and reflect and feel the emotions you might be experiencing? So anytime I work with someone who is, in this space and kind of having these challenges, say, well, when those emotions come up, pause, reflect, think about, okay, where is this emotion coming from? Why am I experiencing this? Why am I feeling like this? And the goal is to get grounded in logic, in the objective lens, and try to remove the emotional reaction. Because, as people, especially in the modern age, we're so emotional and we react so much. And before you know it, we're not making intentional choices. We're just responding emotionally. So it's trying to mitigate that. So asking yourself a couple of grounding questions of, okay, why am I feeling like this? What is this? What is this? Where is this coming from? And then trying to identify, okay, what are the obstacles in my way? What are the actions, behaviors, mindsets that are going to help me here? What's not going to help me? So it's really flexing that self-reflective muscle and trying to get grounded in almost fact and logic and objective reasoning versus just feeling like you're reacting. And that would be your starting point. So anytime you feel those negative emotions creeping up and you have that tightness, you have that anxiety, or you just feel off, ask yourself a couple of questions, and then we could work on strategies to be more resilient to that. But awareness is step number one.
And is that a good way to just kind of stay on track and focus, is just kind of being aware of what's going on, why you're having these emotions? Personally, I went through different phases of imposter syndrome. I had, a major issue with it in dentistry, and I'm pretty
Mm-hmm.
much over that. But then I started writing books, I started speaking, and each time I did one of those, the imposter syndrome just crept back in, and I kept
Right.
looking at myself in the mirror and saying, "Who are you to do this?" But I would just stay on course and end up getting past that, What are your recommendations there for even just a dentist that's, to stay on track of being positive?
Yeah, Eric, you bring up a really interesting point is, you said you kind of, I got over it as a dentist, but then I started writing a book and then there it was again. And then I started doing a podcast and there it was again. It's oftentimes when someone is pushing the boundary of their comfort level or their experience level. So if you think of your comfort zone, you have your experience zone, you're an expert in this realm, you're familiar with these activities or this, environment you're in. When you do something new, something ambitious, leading a practice, graduating school, writing a book, and it doesn't have to be professional, it can be personal too. Once you start crossing that boundary of the familiar to the unfamiliar, that's when the emotions take up the most space because you don't have the perspective of being in that area yet. You've never written a book, so how do I know if I'm successful or not? And then all of a sudden, those uncertainties start to grow. So some strategies there, again, being reflective, but asking, okay, what's working? What am I doing well at so far? Am I on track? Also, identifying the specific goal. If you have a goal, like, oh, I want to write a book. Great. Try to get as nuanced and specific as possible. What type of book? What are the messages I want to put in there? When do I want it to go out? When am I writing it? Like, what small actions are supporting the long-term goals? So trying to break down the goal into as much tangible aspects as possible will allow you to focus on actions and ground you in behaviors and mindsets to keep you on track instead of just more broad ideas of, oh, I want to write a book. Well, there's so many variables there. But if you break it down to really, really specific plan, that keeps you grounded and involved in activity to where you don't almost have time for the emotions to take over. So,
Yeah, I think dentists are often, and I was like this too. We suffer from not having any documented goals.
mm,
I don't think that, working in my practice and then when it's time to retire, sell it. There's so many things that you can add to goals, whether it's personal goals, professional goals, something you want to do in the next year or two. I write them down, document them, and look at them often.
mhm.
Because if you don't, then they will get forgotten or you won't follow through with them. So I love that point about goals. Um, is that part of the clarity process, or can you explain what the clarity process is?
Yeah, it's a great segue. So the clarity process that I promote is really a result of my own personal experience. So, throughout my professional journey, I've had my own, personal experiences with, imposter syndrome and debilitating doubt. Up until a couple of years ago, you know, I've done well in my career, but the missing piece for me was the passion to help other people. And even though, with sales and business development, like I was helping, but I felt like it wasn't truly aligned to my own core values of wanting to enable the success of somebody else. And, I wanted to bring that more into my professional life, but I felt like I had to force myself into a career that almost served others. And it wasn't serving them in the way that resonated with me. So I continued to force myself down that, those roads and those paths. And even though I had opportunities, it just didn't sit right with me. And I had this breaking point where I was like, you know what, this is not helping. If I want to feel that I am pursuing something meaningful and purposeful, I have to build that into my life intentionally. So in hindsight, what allowed me to break through that moment and to build the business that I'm working on now and my executive coaching was identifying, okay, really, what do I want out of my life? And I wanted to manifest a career where my main goal is working with others and enabling the success of others. So that was like the big goal. And then that goal had to get broken down into dozens and dozens of smaller milestones. Okay, what are the actions that I need to tackle those milestones? What are the resources I need to acquire? What's the knowledge? What do I have to learn? What are the mindset I have to shed and shift in all of this? So I literally made myself a game plan of if I wanted to get where I am today to where I want to be, what are the steps in between? Because having just, oh, I want this in my life, well, it doesn't give me anything to work on. So it's trying to break down the goal as much as you can. So that's step one. Step two, pairing actions in between from where you are, where you want to go. What are the behaviors? What are the, like, how are you scheduling your activity? Three is reflecting on what's working, because you need that reflection piece, because you have to know if you're on track or not. Where am I successful? What's getting me closer? What's distracting me? What's hindering me? Amplify what's working, refine what's not. And it's that current constant cycle of looking at your goal, breaking it down, tackling it with action, reflecting on what's working. And that's that clarity process that allowed me to get forward momentum without the negative influence of the emotion and uncertainties and second guessing myself.
Now, can you set that an example of how that's helped others in dentistry?
Yeah. So I have, a colleague who is a consultant on their own and was preparing to propose a contract for a client. Think of like a practice management type consultant, and it was a high ticket client, and they were preparing the proposal, and they had everything written down. They had their pricing, had the scope of work, and kind of the relationship of their work to the client's work, and was completely second guessing themselves. Just, I feel like I'm underselling myself. I don't know if this pricing is right. I don't know if they want me to work more, work less. So he said, let's pause. What's your ultimate goal? Ultimate goal was to try to build their consulting career in a way that complemented a healthy work-life balance. So that was the ultimate kind of aspiration that they wanted to achieve. Well, how are you feeling about that in your current proposal? Well, I feel like I would be overworking for the amount of money that I'm, proposing. So we got that aligned. Okay, what are the steps that you need to restructure this proposal? Okay, the scope of work had to change a little bit. The value of the pricing had to adjust a little bit. So we got really grounded in like fact and logic, calm down the emotional side. And it actually turned out in their favor, where the practice not only accepted their offer but proposed to increase the value because they wanted more services within the scope of the work that they proposed. So it was just like a great success story of having someone get out of their own like kind of spiraling in their head about second guessing everything and really focusing on tangible, specific data and actions and behaviors.
Yeah, and second guessing, it is exhausting when you're constantly second guessing yourself or not, believing in yourself. I know a lot of dentists, they'll end up just talking themselves out of things. They'll
Mm,
talk patients out of treatment, they get because they just
wow.
keep second guessing themselves and they're not confident in the way they're presenting treatment to patients. Great stuff, man. Tom, let's end up with two final questions. Number one
Yeah.
is, how do we find out more about what you're up to? And then the last question is, what advice would you give to the young dental professionals out there?
Sure, sure. I'd love to talk about this stuff. As you can tell, I can go on all day about, getting out of your own way, setting goals, being really grounded. Again, it's my own personal experience, but it really empowers me to give every fiber of my being to enable success of others. So reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm fairly active on LinkedIn. You can send me a message. I'm starting to get more active on Facebook, so you can find me on Facebook as well. My website is ascendpropathways.com. And I can tell you where Ascend Professional Pathways, kind of came from and everything. But I have a lot of free resources on the website, a lot of information about my coaching and training platform. You can send a message through my website, but best is probably LinkedIn.
Awesome.
And yeah,
Actually,
advice for the
can you tell us what the Ascend platform, what that stands for, and how you came with that name?
yeah, yeah. So Ascend Professional Pathways. The imagery I kind of that inspired me to build this platform was climbing a mountain, or finding a way up to the summit of a large aspiration. And I'm an avid outdoors, person. I love to rock climb, hike, and go camping and everything. And I always had that imagery of the natural world of wanting to elevate myself. However, there's many different ways to get to the top. And my philosophy of coaching is not one specific way. My philosophy is walking side by side with my clients to find the right path for them and helping them along their own pathway. So the pathways is, supportive of what's unique and what resonates well with those I'm working with. Ascend, going to the top. So, that's kind of where my logo came from and everything. But that's the imagery that comes out when I think of that.
Awesome. Yeah, I had to ask you. And yeah, let's go with the final question. Advice for the young dentists out there.
There are resources out there. There are colleagues and people you can talk to that have experienced what you are experiencing. So just like your story, Eric, and everyone else that I work with, there are a lot of commonalities from generation to generation. And even though it might feel that you are alone or isolated in your experiences, positive or challenging, know that there are others who have walked that path before and would be willing to talk and to help and offer advice and support. So if you are feeling any of that tension in your life, professional or personal, there are people out there. And I just think the modern person has gotten too reserved. We have to build that community aspect again and help one another. It has to be a little more intentional, but they're there.
Love it. Great advice, Tom. Thank you so much for a great episode.
Thanks. It was great being here, Eric. Thank you so much.
Thanks again for listening to the Stress Free Dentist podcast. And don't hesitate to get in touch with me at info@thestressfreedentist.com. And if you haven't already, please subscribe on your favorite platform and leave us a review. Until the next episode, I'm Dr. Eric Block, the Stress Free Dentist.